DeepSeek AI, a Chinese company, developed the cost-effective DeepSeek R1 chatbot for around $6 million. It uses less computing power and data than models like OpenAI's ChatGPT, which was projected to lose around $5 billion in 2024. The cost savings are staggering. Energy efficient and open source, DeepSeek is one of the top free apps on smart devices, possibly benefiting from US chip export controls.
U.S. government started to impose export control on Chinese tech firms starting from Trump's first term, but under Biden administration, they further intensified these efforts. And the most sweeping effort came in October 2022, which imposed very broad restrictions for Chinese firms to access both AI chips and chip semiconductor equipment.
The Trump administration quickly blamed Biden as the AI industry discusses DeepSeek's potential impact.
The last administration sat on their hands and allowed China to rapidly develop this AI program. And so President Trump believes in restoring American AI dominance. And that's why he took very strong executive action this past week to sign executive orders to roll back some of the onerous regulations on the AI industry. And President Trump has also proudly appointed the first AI and crypto czar at this White House, David Sachs, whom I spoke with yesterday, very knowledgeable on this subject, and his team is here working every single day to ensure American AI dominance.
The Hangzhou-based Chinese firm used less advanced H800 chips, allowed for export until late 2023 to power its model. This success highlights the ineffectiveness of US export controls in stopping other countries from developing advanced models. However, Chinese models face political limitations, especially censorship. The engine, launched on Monday, initially began answering about Chinese artist and activist Ai Weiwei, then switched to a generic message, "Sorry, that's beyond my current scope. Let's talk about something else." It did the same for the Dalai Lama.
Chinese companies, even if they are relatively very independent, they're still within that legal structure, within that political system, and held. They're bound to expectations that go along with that it's hard for them to escape expectations of censorship, especially around the central topics that the Chinese government is not in favor of.
Chinese firms like Huawei thrive despite restrictions. China aims to lead AI by 2030, raising the question, is this a new tech race between the US and China, a Sputnik moment for big power rivalry? US President Donald Trump calls DeepSeek's rise a wake-up call for Silicon Valley, urging the US to focus on winning. The Economic Brief, DD India.
Mr. Basu, is DeepSeek, more hype than substance? Why would someone want to use an AI chatbot that is censored by the Chinese government?
Well, it is a lot of hype. I think that the $6 million price tag or cost tab for DeepSeek is almost certainly incorrect. Also, I think it's important to understand that DeepSeek has no revenue source at the moment. So, when you're talking about profitability, that's an issue. It is certainly not a Sputnik moment because remember that Sputnik demonstrated that Russia got the first spaceship to leave Earth. It beat the United States on that, and that was a genuine victory in the space race. It also was the first country to send, Soviet Union was the first country to send a man, a woman, and a dog to space. So,
right.
That was the Sputnik moment. Here, DeepSeek is still only around the 10th fastest AI chatbot. It's not quicker than OpenAI's or even Google and the various other generative AI systems that exist. So it is not the cutting edge. It's not the winner just yet. It is a cheap alternative. You could think of it as a generic pharmaceutical versus a patented one.
Sure.
And the other interesting point is that DeepSeek has used Nvidia's chips.
Yes, it has.
And
that's
it
a question.
stockpiled Nvidia's chips. and the Nvidia ban was only imposed a few months ago.
There are some theories that they may not have used just Nvidia chips because, one thing that comes out of this episode is that the Chinese businessmen are quite frugal. They seem to understand business cost cutting more than the Americans. But is the real story how Huawei could be actually, Huawei chips could be powering this, and that's why we don't know what the real cost is?
Well, first of all, the founder of DeepSeek has openly admitted that
he said he's used the H800.
He had stockpiled Nvidia's chips, and that's what he used. So Huawei is quite a bit further behind. A. B. I think it's also important to understand that if DeepSeek succeeds, if it becomes a real success story, the poor founder of DeepSeek is likely to end up in jail. I mean, this is what happens to the richest man in China every single time. I mean, I've looked at the last 10 cases of a man or woman becoming the richest person in China. Next thing you know is that they end up in jail or exile or out of circulation for 2 years, etc. So, the problem is that the private sector does not have much freedom in China. It is the private companies that have come up with some of the greatest advances in China. If you think about Alibaba, all of these companies, Baidu, etc., they're all private companies that have operated in a very difficult environment. They have less access to credit, and they still emerge. So the entrepreneurship in China is a huge story. There's no doubt about it. The only problem is that entrepreneurs are a threat to the state, they're a threat to the Communist Party, and that limits their ability to go beyond certain limits.
Now, India is also developing a semiconductor ecosystem, investing in AI. India is also working on this large language model for Indian languages to use and for people to be more familiar with it here in our country. Given the fact that India is also in the race, I mean, what do you think? I mean, the budget should also be focusing a little bit on this?
We cannot ignore it. We certainly need to keep the focus. Now, the problem in India, I think, is that if you look at India as a manufacturing hub, India is a very successful manufacturer of steel, aluminium, cement, cars, pharmaceuticals, petrochemicals, refined petroleum. So there's a whole bunch of things where India is actually the second or third or fourth largest producer in the world. So, but the problem is that in semiconductors, we are beginners. We haven't yet started producing our first substantial semiconductors. We do a lot of chip design, but not actual manufacturing. So we have one part of the ecosystem missing in India, and that is where the focus needs to be, and has been for the last 3 or 4 years. The budgets have focused a lot of attention on developing a semiconductor ecosystem. There are at least 4 semiconductor projects that are on the anvil.
Right.
So that's a start. But this sort of start was made by Taiwan 35 years ago or 37 years ago. So compared to them, we are quite a bit quite far behind. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And certainly the budget can play a part in encouraging the development of that ecosystem, including encouraging some of our companies. I mean, we are a software powerhouse. Why didn't some of our Indian companies come up with what DeepSeek has done? I mean, after all, DeepSeek
they probably would.
Well, now they can use some of the open source material and come up with an alternative. If it is genuinely open source, it should be easy for someone else to copy.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Prasanjit Basu. Thank you for joining us on the Economic Brief.